He's been called the world's most repulsive politician. His controversial statements have been described as sexist, homophobic, and racist. His government's recent attempts to alter data related to the coronavirus have lent credibility to those who had previously called him authoritarian. All of these criticisms and more had already been leveled at Jair Bolsonaro before late 2018, when he won the Brazilian presidential election in a landslide. So, how did he do it?
Bolsonaro has made a career of having this personality that's this very alpha male, macho, I'm gonna show you, refusing to bow down to critics kind of attitude. A lot of people make a comparison to Bolsonaro's rise to the rise of Trump. In a broad brush kind of way, that is a totally fair comparison. It was a populist movement that swept Bolsonaro into office, and it was a rejection of the status quo.
And so that's an honor to give that to you. Thank you very much.
But this comparison may not give Bolsonaro's own electoral success enough credit. Whereas Donald Trump won the US election while losing the popular vote, Bolsonaro was elected with around 55% of the vote in the final round. Unfortunately for him, that popularity stands in stark contrast to today. He now faces an economic crisis, cratering poll numbers, and a coronavirus outbreak that is the worst in the region. The question now is whether Bolsonaro can leverage his outspoken style and army of dedicated supporters to salvage his presidency. Jair Bolsonaro grew up with 5 brothers in the southern Brazilian town of Eldorado. After 2 years in Rio de Janeiro City Council, he began his 27-year career in Congress and his ascent to national fame. During this time, he would cement some of his beliefs in the public eye. On crime, he said in 2017, "A policeman who doesn't kill isn't a policeman." On LGBT rights, he said in 2011, "No father is capable of loving a gay son." And he told a fellow member of Congress that he would not rape her because she was too ugly. In July of 2018, he announced his candidacy for president with the slogan, "Brazil above everything, God above everyone." He proved immediately adept at building an unprecedented coalition of voters.
That grouping of the alpha male, firearm ownership, the evangelical, and then the military, that has become his base, and they didn't used to be together. So he's truly transformed the landscape of Brazilian politics in a way that it's hard to see that going away.
Bolsonaro also picked the perfect time to portray himself as the anti-corruption candidate. Operation Car Wash, the largest anti-corruption effort in Brazil's history, had begun only a few years before, and had since ensnared many important figures in the country's political left, including 2 former Brazilian presidents. Bolsonaro took office as the 38th president of Brazil at the beginning of 2019. He immediately made good on one campaign promise: stripping Brazil's Indigenous Affairs Agency of the responsibility to identify and demarcate indigenous lands.
Indigenous people in Brazil for several decades have been really aggressively pushing to get legal rights to their land and title. He specifically said when he was running for election that if he was elected, he would not allow indigenous people to get any more land in Brazil, and basically would shut down all of those processes. And that was the first thing he did when he came into office, which is a very symbolic way to indicate what your position is.
When the Amazon experienced record-breaking wildfires in mid-2019, Bolsonaro downplayed the damage, calling the data lies and firing the head of the government organization that produced it. After international outcry, he dispatched soldiers and allocated funds to fight the fires. But Bolsonaro's main focus, and what swept him into office, was his promise to kickstart Latin America's largest economy. But GDP in Bolsonaro's first year in office grew at only 1.1%, down from 1.3% in each of the previous 2 years. His signature accomplishment thus far has been a pension reform bill that was passed with congressional approval. He's also spent his time in office stoking increasingly larger fights with the press.
Aquele dia do assédio da jornalista dele, ela queria furo. Ela queria dar furo.
The relationship with the media is really antagonistic in a way that hasn't been seen before. And at a temperature level that hasn't been seen before.
Bolsonaro stimulates his supporters to fight with journalists. Every day it's escalation of problems and aggressivity in front of his residence. Because of that, all important TV channels and newspapers suspend this coverage because it became too aggressive.
Now, Bolsonaro faces a host of problems threatening his administration.
He has created a political crisis on top of a public health crisis and a looming economic crisis. Most economists forecast that Latin America is headed into a terrible scenario for the next year, possibly the next decade. He has multiplied the crises by pushing people out of his own government, out of his own cabinet.
Brazil has one of the highest death tolls of any nation from coronavirus, and on many days has the most confirmed new cases of any country in the world. Bolsonaro has refused to endorse social distancing and expressed enthusiasm for using chloroquine to treat the virus. In early June, Bolsonaro's government was accused of trying to cover up data related to the coronavirus when the health ministry pulled the entire historic database for COVID-19 from its website. The ministry has since relented and republished some historical information amid a growing backlash. The president has downplayed the threat of the virus, calling it just a little flu, and very infrequently dons a mask.
The president in Brazil doesn't have power to lock down and forbidden the shops and commerce here. The example of Bolsonaro is really strong. Thousands of people follow Bolsonaro. And when he said it's unnecessary to use masks, for example, thousands of people followed.
But even putting aside his handling of Brazil's coronavirus outbreak, another threat looms in the resignation of his justice minister, Sergio Moro. Moro is a national hero in Brazil, having been the head investigated judge for Operation Car Wash.
Flash forward to Moro resigning, and in his resignation, claiming the reason he was resigning was because of corrupt practices of the president. That's totally damning to the credibility of Bolsonaro. The short version is that Moro said that he caught Bolsonaro trying to pressure him to change the head of the police chief of Rio de Janeiro and the head of police for the federal government. And Moro believes the reason Bolsonaro was pushing to make those changes is because Bolsonaro's own children, his 3 sons, are under investigation for criminal acts in Rio de Janeiro and at the federal level.
Moro and Bolsonaro have declined to comment for this video, and Bolsonaro and his sons have separately denied any wrongdoing in the matter. Regardless, Bolsonaro's approval rating has taken a hit in light of the recent scandals.
His supporters love him. There are die-hard Bolsonaro fans in Brazil, and they truly believe that the media is attacking him, that all of the criticisms are just trying to bring down the only guy who is trying to get rid of the corruption that Brazil has been riddled with for the past several decades.